What are we to make of all the tech bros around Trump? Is there really an oligarchy afoot? And is Elon part of some darker reality we have to deal with? Like what's going to happen with TikTok? I know someone who can answer all these questions in a way that surely I couldn't. You want to know who? Great. I'm Chris Cuomo. Welcome to the Chris Cuomo Project. Kara Swisher. You know her from all her work on the technology community, the business, the culture, her work with Scott Galloway on their amazing podcast. She has unique insights to what Elon Musk is about, but more importantly, what he wants and what the other tech bros want and what TikTok is really about and what's most likely going to happen and like a dozen other things, because this woman is DEEP deep. So, a conversation about what matters from someone who's been studying these people for decades. Kara Swisher, thank you for joining me. I've missed you.
Thank you. Yeah, you have? Really? You think of me often?
Yeah, but I don't have to think about you because I'm a fan of you and Galloway.
So. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
And I've been watching you recently. What matters to you?
Right now?
Yeah, about the political dynamic. What are you looking at? What are you looking for?
It's a good question. I just want people to understand who these people are and what they're doing and what's happening here. Having had a history of covering every single one of those people that was on display, and I'm using that term very clearly, display. They were like, the glass menagerie kind of thing for Trump. I want people to understand how they got there and why they got there and what's happening among and between them and what I think they actually want. They might say differently, but I'm pretty sure I've got a good bead on what they're up to.
What's the punch? What's the headline?
Well, it depends on the person, right? Everybody. I mean, one of the things that really occurred to me when Trump mentioned Mars in his speech, it was kind of a jumble of stuff in that speech, but Mars particularly is something Elon Musk has wanted to get to. And I went back to interviews that I'd forgotten that I had done in 2016 and 18 with Musk and recalling another one where he talked incessantly about getting to Mars. And in the first interview in 2016, he said something that was funny at the time where he said, "I want to die on Mars, but just not on landing," which was a pretty famous quote for him at the time. And it was funny, but he really has this idea of that we need to get to Mars for humanity's sake. And so a lot of people sort of try to guess what his motivation is, and some of it's malevolent. He's just kind of a jerk. But a lot of it has to do with getting to Mars. And what he's doing is getting Trump to back his greatest dream, which isn't money, which he has a lot of, which isn't power necessarily, but it's power to get to Mars. And so it was really very apparent to me to watch him react to that. I think that's been his goal the whole time in a weird, strange way.
The word that is being said now is oligarchy.
Yes,
and
it's a good word.
It's a little frustrating to me because the idea of corporate influencers and the gap.
Not new.
And yeah, but new term for it, I guess. Do you see it? Is it appropriate now?
I think it is because when you're talking about corporate interests, that's very different than wealthy people, right? These are like, you can talk all you want about Jack Welch or the influence of Lockheed Martin, but they were, pikers compared. They had 10, 20, 50 million. If they had 100, they were incredibly wealthy. These people have $200 billion, 400. I mean, Elon Musk's wealth has doubled from 200 and some billion to 400 and some billion. So yes, I would say oligarch works fine here because it's not just corporate. And then the companies themselves are multi-trillion-dollar companies. And so I do think it's appropriate because of the enormous personal wealth each of these people have. And even someone that was standing there like Sundar Pichai, who was the poorest one there, has $1.3 billion, right? Tim Cook is a few $1 billion, and Zuckerberg 200 and some billion, Bezos 200 and some billion. Musk was in that range and now is in 400 billion. So it's just sitting there with $1 trillion in wealth, or close to $1 trillion in wealth.
Is the problem the wealth or what it allows them to do to society?
Yeah, I mean, if I was that wealthy, I wouldn't be sitting there on a freezing cold dais with Donald Trump using me as a prop, as a TV prop. I would be And I always joke, I'd buy France and just be eating cheese like all day. Like, I don't know. It's not the wealth, it's the power that it brings and the ability. In Musk's case, he's using him these others probably wouldn't do this, but he's using him as a cudgel to people that get out of line, threatening primaries and things like that. That's the use of Musk right now, because he's more than willing to spend and he kind of likes it. The others, I doubt he could get to spend on his behalf against enemies. But with Musk, he's got his own personal ATM machine.
What's your biggest concern of what they want?
Oh, well, they want more of what they have. Not everything, but not enough is the way I think about them in a lot of ways. I mean, they want no regulation. And I think a good interview to look at is the one that the New York Times did with Andreessen Horowitz. They didn't push back on him in any way, full of really wrong-headed interpretations of history, which he's done for years around me and everybody else. And they just sat there and typed it essentially. But they have an incredible victimization idea. And you saw that today when someone from Fox News was saying how Zuckerberg told him he didn't like being called an oligarch. Or when you saw Zuckerberg complaining on Joe Rogan that some Biden administration official wrote him a testy email. I mean, honestly, Chris, you've written me more testy texts than I can say. I'm back at you. But it's like they're so victimized for wealthy people. And the minute you say a word about them, they melt, or they're like paper mache, or, delicate flowers, whatever word you want to use.
Rogan is that way too. For a guy who loves the hurt game and is a great commentator of MMA, he does not like anybody judging anything he says. But more importantly, unlike you and me, although you have a solid base of people who support you, he's got a lot of people who defend him because he is some kind of symbol for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of sort of men of his type. I think he has women fans. It's not true to be just men, but it's largely men. If you did a demographic study, it would be men of a certain age, right? Who just, I don't like being told what to do anymore. And the fact of the matter is they basically got to tell everybody what to do for centuries. And then for 5 seconds, they couldn't call someone the R word or the N word or oh no, we can't do that. We can't we can't say boobs over and over again without getting slapped, and I think they're like, we want to say what we want to say. It's a really, again, for 27 minutes, they don't get to say what they want to say. And therefore, someone just told me, Sheryl Sandberg had lean in. We forgot that men slap back, right? Or hit back or something, whatever metaphor you want to use. I don't love using violent ones, but that's what's happening. So, yeah, I mean, I think these people cannot take criticism. They just can't. It's really laughable. Again, if I was this rich, I wouldn't care what people thought of me. Like, what do I don't right now, but they definitely have a victim complex.
Do you caution people who want to oppose what's happening to pick their spots? Do you have any concern over the Musk salute thing that's all over the place and having people in high dudgeon?
I'll tell you, I think we can't react to everything they do. In Musk's case, I think he knew just what he was doing. He likes to troll people. He does it all the time. And it's kind of like with Trump, you'd get, and I get why people are upset by it because it's upsetting. And it does have real world implications because many years ago, when he was attacking the press over Tesla, he used to always relentlessly attack. And I wrote him and I said, can you just lay off a little bit? They have their criticism of your Tesla and just live with it. And he goes, I will not live with it. And I go, well, your fans are kind of really crazy, some of them, right? And they have violent words. And he's, I'm not responsible for my fans. And I go, you kind of are. Like, you kind of are, depending on what you do. And so if I was someone in that level of fame, I would be very careful that I don't do something that looks like that. And I think, everyone's like, oh, he's on the spectrum. I have a lot of relatives on the spectrum. I've covered people on the spectrum. I've never seen that happen. Like, it's an insult to people on the spectrum to say they can't control their arms in some fashion. I think he knew just what he was doing. He likes to troll people. I don't necessarily think it was anti-Semitic, but it certainly was obnoxious. And I think he knew full well what it symbolized. I suspect he did. He'll say he does, and he'll make my heart is going out to,
Yeah.
that. And in that way, I kind of, the joke I made, and I think the best way to deal with them is to mock them in some fashion. I said, when Rolf was doing that hand signal and The Sound of Music, his heart was just going out to the Von Trapp family. Like give me a fucking break. He knew what he was doing.
I think you got to.
He said it was a Roman salute,
yes.
right?
Well,
except a Roman salute is what the Nazis copied.
That's
right.
Right.
So it's kind of the same thing.
I don't look. I think it was probably an extension of the "my heart goes out." Who knows? But my concern is if you go all in all on that, you miss what his father's saying. And
right.
I know that maybe they're
Grandfather.
estranged or whatever, but this Errol Musk, who I'm sure you've come across,
I've encountered.
That's problematic for Trump. I have to tell you, his people, even over the course of the last few days surrounding the inauguration, they don't like the Nazi stuff. They do not like that Musk put them in this position. They think it's stupid. And I'll tell you what it sounds like. It has the same ring of the text that I had returned after Ramaswamy's thing that he put out after Christmas. The same thing.
They didn't like that.
We don't need anybody around us who does. And then I would fill in the blank for them. What Trump does already? Is that what it is?
No, Trump can do it.
That's right.
Trump can do it. And Trump can do it.
That's right.
It's not like people always want fair. There's no fair here. He get away with stuff that other people don't get away with.
Absolutely.
It's just the way it is. And I know, sometimes on the left, they're always like, can you believe it? I'm like, I believe it. And they're like, can you believe it? I'm like, I believe it. He's done it 3 times. Like, let's stop not believing that he won't do it. And in some ways, it's sort of built into the way you look at him. And believe me, I don't like it. It's bullying. It's mean. It's casually cruel. It's just cruel in ways that I find you just shouldn't treat people like that. That said, that's me, right? I can't. I obviously he had parental issues. That's an obvious thing you can look at there. But in Musk's case, Musk is not the show. And one person in the Trump people said to me, said to Maggie Haberman, who then told it to me, in an interview I just did, was Trump is a one-ring circus. There's not 2 rings. There's not 2 ringmasters. And I think even though the only thing that's keeping Musk there at this point is the money and the popular, you know what I mean? Like he can use him still as a prop and then draw in. He managed to draw in the other props because of Musk, because they were like, hey, let's get while the getting's good. And so he's useful still. But look, Ramaswamy's out. If you don't and it was interesting because a lot of people are like, because he's a brown person and Musk is white. I'm like, no. If Ramaswamy had $400 billion, he'd be sitting right there and Musk would be on his keister.
They have a weird, I guess the right word would be perverse irony that they act within, which is, we know that this is what Trump does. That's different. You can't be like that around him.
That's true. You take away attention.
And that, whatever, the logic doesn't work for me, but it still is true. And in watching what has happened in this immediate flush, you have to believe that the first few weeks of Trumpdom is going to be him pleasing the MAGA folk. And I know that I am not among the smartest people in our business. So if that's so obvious to me, I don't understand why once again we see so many jumping at every single thing.
I get it. So it's the flood the zone thing Bannon really did. Bannon clocks a lot of stuff. He's just a terrible, heinous person, but he certainly clocks it correctly, is that you flood the zone and with so much shit and so much serious stuff, you can't tell one from the other. So you're just like overwhelmed. And then what do you hit at? It's like, I'm not a sports person, but I suppose it's like throwing 1,000,000 baseballs at someone, right? Which one do you hit? And then it always hits you. In there, though, there are some really, I think letting those even J.D. Vance was caught unaware because letting people with criminal violent records out was really disturbing. That was, to me, I get it. Like years ago, people don't remember this, but during the Whiskey Rebellion, George Washington let a lot of people off for their rebellion and violence because he's like, we all have to just move on. And even though a lot of people were saying, no, these people must be hung or whatever, he just was like, I get it, but move on. And so some of the nonviolent people, terrible people, they shouldn't have done that. they probably should go to jail, but in the interest of moving forward, we probably have to let the 911s go. People aren't going to like me saying that, but it's just, there's no way to move forward without it. The violent ones should stay in jail, period. End of story. The ones who assaulted police officers, who planned things, who Stuart Rhodeses and the Enrique Torres, like, come on. And that to me was, even though it's a lot of slop and nothing burgers that he was throwing, that one was really dangerous as far as he's building his own private militia, from what I mean, that in that regard.
That is what is said. My feeling, look, and maybe I'm just jaded, or maybe I don't see it as serious enough, and I'll wind up being proven wrong. But my instinct is, I'm waiting for what he does. And now some will say, well, that is what he does. No, that's a posture. And he promised it. And I have to tell you, the pardon power is one of the stupidest things in the Constitution.
Things, including the Biden stuff. It's a race to the bottom.
Yeah, and I don't know why they invest. I do know why. When you read the convention history, they were just used to a monarchy. And they had a hard time forgetting all those things, and it was familiar, so they put it in there, and we don't need it, and it's always abused. But my concern is there are going to be opportunities. He's not talking about health care or prices for a reason. He's talking about.
Did you notice that?
Yeah, he's talking about gas
on those things.
The way he is for a reason, which is pump, pump, pump. That's a good thing. I'll be able to show I'm doing it. He is going to introduce this country, I promise you this, to the concept of the world market of gasoline that people like you have been talking about for years when they talk about gas prices. And he's going to say, turns out this OPEC and Russia, and they're all against us. And I would have had the prices here. We'd have like $1 a gas, $1 a gallon, but they're killing me. So I did what I was supposed to do that Biden wouldn't do, but they're now screwing me. He's going to introduce the world market out of an article of convenience. So if you wait, you hold your fire, you're going to have opportunities to say the prices are still high.
That's correct.
And you didn't do it. And healthcare, you said you were going to get rid of the ACA. You can't, but you haven't fixed it. And my caution on that to Democrats is you better work with them on immigration reform. Otherwise, they're going to take the win. And
that's correct.
That'll beat you in the midterms again. So if you want to get to a better place for the country, work with them on immigration reform and hold your fire. What Trump says is almost meaningless, even as president.
Well, it's interesting. The feeling I got with a lot of these executive orders, and everyone's like, oh no, look at him. I'm like, these seem weak, actually. Like the TikTok one, he can't do anything. The birthright citizen, it's going to be overturned. I'm sorry, it just is. I think, and we should have a debate about these kind of things. Of course, we should reform things after decades, and I'm happen to be for that, but we should have a debate, people who aren't, right? And there's certainly a legitimate argument to be made on all these, and some of these things, not all of them, but a lot of them felt like, wow, there's a whole lot of nothing burger there, which he does a lot, whether it's a Bible or a steak or a university. It's sort of this, like the TikTok thing, which of course I would pay more attention to, is literally all I have to look at is Apple, you can't download TikTok. They don't take him seriously. They don't think there's a deal. And so he has, like, in that regard, he has three choices: to change the law, right? Because right now, Apple and Google are paying attention to Congress and the Supreme Court, who they consider the power, right? There's a law, they're going to follow it. They don't think Trump can protect them, nor do they trust him. And therefore, it doesn't matter. He can't protect them. It doesn't matter if they trust him or not. And they will have huge fines. Amazon and Oracle have exposed themselves quite a bit financially. And it has a 5-year thing. So if there's another president in a couple of years, it's disastrous for a corporation to have to make decisions based on this system. So he can't do anything there. So he's either got to get Congress to pass a new law that's opposite to this law, which is really bad, right? It's that he's going to look like a China toady. He's going to force China into doing it, to doing a deal. They're not doing that. They've got us over a barrel. We look like, as Scott says, non-serious people. And then the other thing is use what I call the Elon feint, which is sell it to someone who's friendly to China and make it look like our national security is protected when it is not, right? When you sell it to a friendly person to China, but you don't really sell it and they continue to have control over it. So every choice Trump has here is bad, and that executive order exposed every bit of it. Like,
the hypocrisy of the executive orders for his people is that they talk about going back to the Constitution. So you want to go back to the Constitution, and you like that he just signed an order that flouts the checks and
14th,
balances
the
of the
second.
Constitution, and birthright citizenship is in the 14th Amendment.
It really is. It's
and
right
I
there.
will give you that there are people who believe the amendments don't count as much as the 7 articles because they were add-ons.
Right.
And as ludicrous as that is to me as a lawyer, I get that you think that, but if you care about the Constitution, you can't have a president who thinks he can sign a piece of paper and change it, because that's not the process. So there's hypocrisy. I get it. There always is. It's just a little bit more obvious.
The other part of the TikTok thing is, guess who had an executive order to ban TikTok?
Him, 2020.
Donald Trump. I honestly, and I actually agreed with him on those on the national security issues. He was right on that.
Support for the Chris Cuomo Project comes from AG1. Listen, new year, new you. Look, whatever. I believe every day is a chance to try again. And for me, AG1 is a fundamental part of my routine. This year, you want to get to a better place, try AG1 for yourself. It's the perfect time to start a healthy new habit. Everybody's doing that right now anyway, right? Why not do something that could actually work for you? The AG1 special offer. New subscribers will get a free $76 gift when they sign up. You're going to get a welcome kit, a bottle of D3K2. Why D3K2? Because the K helps the absorption of the D. You see what I'm saying? Science. Supplements you'll see are now doing D3K2. AG1's been doing it for a long time. Why? They're ahead of the curve. They're also going to give you 5 free travel packs in your first box. So you get 5 free travel packs, you get the bottle of D3K2 and some other gifts. So make sure to check out drinkag1.com/CCP and you'll get this offer. Drinkag1.com/CCP for the Chris Cuomo Project, and you can start the new year on a healthier note. Support for the Chris Cuomo Project comes from Factor. Are you ready to optimize your nutrition this year? You cannot out-train a bad diet. That's where Factor comes in. Chef-made gourmet meals makes eating and eating well easy. They're dietitian approved, ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes, so you can fuel right, feel right, no matter what life throws at you. Factor comes fresh, fully prepared, perfect for any active, busy lifestyle. How about losing 8 pounds in 8 weeks because of Factor Keto meals? Based on a randomized, controlled clinical trial with Factor Keto, you may be able to do it. Of course, results are going to vary. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences on the menu each week, it is easy to pick meals tailored to your goals. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/Cuomo50off and use the code Cuomo50off, and guess what you get off? 50% off your first box with free shipping. That's code Cuomo50off at factormeals.com/Cuomo50off, and you get bingo 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Help me understand this. Every lawmaker I talk to, because the votes were, we've never seen cooperation like that, right? Since the Iraq War.
79 senators.
So
300.
So much, it was like 85-11 in the Senate and whatever it was in the House. Everyone I talked to, they say, yeah, they took me in the skiff and they showed me, yeah, the Chinese are doing this. I said in a way that they're not doing it on the other platforms. Well, I don't know. They didn't talk to us about it with that.
Bingo.
And nothing that you can share with people? No, can't share it. When have we ever had a regulation like this that does affect First Amendment rights that is said to not affect them, and no debate over it, and everybody in government agrees? What am I missing about this?
You're not missing anything. Actually, oddly enough, you're in sync with AOC, who made a very good point about this. She goes, what I saw wasn't substantive enough to make me want to override the First Amendment. And that's why she voted against it. She goes, I would have been happy if they had shown me real proof. And I would have, of course, voted for it. But I couldn't because they didn't show me anything. That was one. The second thing is, why wasn't there a bigger, larger bill that dealt with all these foreign interference issues across all the platforms? Because those platforms didn't want, they're American platforms, they didn't want them to happen. Because these people are so, as you could see, guess who was sitting in the front row? That's why they were sitting in the front row, because they got to get out of it. Everyone there had one of those elements, right? Whether it's Google or Apple or Facebook or Meta. So yes, I agree with you. There wasn't enough proof, but I have a different point of view, having I had wrote a piece about this 6-7 years ago saying, I love TikTok. I think it's great. I use it on a burner phone because I just don't trust the Chinese. I don't, and not because I had proof. I just was like, well, if we were in there, what would we do? We would influence. We would possibly spy. We would definitely try to influence. And so that we don't know what they could do is enough for me. Like that they have the access to that, and we don't let them have it anywhere else in any media. So and we don't let them have it with phones or chips, or you know what I mean. We do it everywhere else, so why not here? That to me, I don't really need proof that they can do it, and they're so interwoven into. They have so much spyware within our cyber attacks on all our systems, our infrastructure. Of course, they're going to avail themselves to that. It just makes sense.
So I get it. I just feel like I'm not more worried about China than I am about Zuckerberg and Musk and these guys, because I feel they do it too. And
they do.
If we're worried about oligarchs, then I don't know why they get a pass on this. And I don't understand why there's been no discussion of the user, even by the Supreme Court. There was no show of proof. Gorsuch, in his concurrence, says, I'm glad we didn't look at that classified stuff because it wasn't shown to the petitioner. So then this was based on government saying, trust us.
Agreed. And who knows?
And nobody talks about the 170 million people and the 7 million businesses, the 23 billion in transactions.
Of all the things here that's problematic, it's the creators creating entrepreneurial things on this platform. And to me, they're the only people that really got screwed. TikTok is owned by wealthy people, wealthy Americans, by the way. It's 15% is Jeff Yass. There's all these American venture capital firms. I mean, it's largely U.S. owned, which is really weird to think about. But it's a Chinese company. I would say, I guess you're right that they're the same, but they're not the same. And Mark Zuckerberg, in an interview with me in 2019, it was a pretty disastrous interview because he was talking about Holocaust deniers deserve their voice too, kind of thing. And he got in a bit of trouble for that. But in that interview, he and I had an exchange about China. And what Mark was essentially arguing was, Kara, is Xi or me? Like, that was it was like us or them. And I was like, I don't like any of you. Like, I got to say, I like him less, but I don't like you that much either. And I think you're an information thief. You know what I mean? So you're using it to sell me, like shitty products. They're using it to surveil and dominate because we're dominating on the world military. It's their way of fucking with us from a military perspective. And I was sort of like, God, what a choice. Shall I have, I don't know, a shitty food I don't like or a shitty food I don't like that kind of thing. And so that's always been Silicon, but we have to be the national heroes.
Right.
And then the minute they can do a deal with China, they do it. Like they'd sell your,
well, of course, China has none of these platforms there because they like to control, but it also is, like many other things. But, remember our parents, how worried they were about television? I mean, the social media is so much more corrosive than television could ever be on its worst day.
Totally. The boob tube.
And I agree. Yeah, right. It's eating your brain. I think Governor Murphy, I know it sounds like nanny state, but I think he's right to back banning the phones in the schools. We did it in our school in Sag Harbor, the public school there. And I'm telling you, I mean, my daughter can say whatever she wants. Everybody I know in that school who's on the teaching side is like, it's made our job so much easier.
What do? They do that. I just interviewed today on the podcast, and it's up right now, the Yonder CEO, which are those pouches.
Yeah.
That's one solution, is physically
We do the Yonder pouches. They're really easy to break.
Yeah, I know they are, but that's okay if you get caught with it's the whole idea of you can't have fucking phones in the schools.
That's right.
Kids.
And that's what our principal does is that, you can break the pouch. As soon as I catch you, this is a punishment you're not going to like. And all the parents, some of the parents, I couldn't believe parents were against it. Well, I can't get in touch with my kid. I was like, go to the front office.
That's right.
Go to the front office like we did. It was okay. I never got
This is what the
lost.
CEO was talking about. He goes, it's called the front office, and you do not, you could also give your kid a flip phone, but offer that to a kid, they don't
No,
want it,
they don't
right?
want it.
You could give them an Apple Watch, by the way.
Yes.
You can reach them on an Apple Watch. You can give them any manner of devices that you can reach them. I don't know why you need to reach your kids.
Yeah, I don't
mean,
get it.
I'm someone who, my kids call me more than I call them. And they're like, why don't you call me? I'm like, I'm busy. Like, aren't you busy? Aren't you in college having a good time? But I would, Scott and I, as you know, think that that kids should not be on social media till 16. And recently I've just done an interview, someone you should have on is the mother of the kid for Character AI who killed himself.
Yeah.
And the character, this
I did.
AI bot.
You gave me the idea and I did it.
Yeah, good. Because really disturbing, disturbing. Like that these characters, it's not user-generated content. It's something else that is really dangerous.
No, and he fell in love with this AI thing and he killed himself.
Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you like someone who never pushed back?
And of course, a big reason that didn't resonate, and I know I'm not supposed to say this, but the kid's brown. And if it were a white kid, and it will be, unfortunately.
There's several cases right now. There was a kid on the spectrum who the bot advised them basically to kill your parents.
Right.
That didn't come off well. Like that if you want to use me more, you better do things to like these bots. But by the way, these bots are only reflecting ourselves back at us.
Yes.
But it's still that the fact that this didn't alert the company who then would alert the parents the fact that they're able to market to kids with cartoon characters, what does it remind you of? Cigarette companies.
That's right.
Remember Joe Camel?
Sure, Joe Camel with the penis nose.
Yeah, the penis nose.
Which I never really understood why he had to have that. Anyway.
Really? You never understood?
I didn't get it at the time because I liked Camel Lights and I wasn't, once I saw the penis nose, I was like, shit.
Did you smoke? I never smoked.
I loved Camel Lights. I love cigars. I'm no longer I never really liked cigarettes. I liked the habit, but I never tolerated it well. Not that anyone thrives on cigarettes, but I didn't get the rush. It didn't help me. It just made it harder for me to breathe. So I got out of it.
Cool with the cigar.
That's exactly right. Cigars I love. That's different. Yeah. I don't inhale them because I'm not a Cuban woman. The idea with Show, why isn't the simple solution that he reincorporates in America, and why isn't that what happened?
With TikTok or with who? With TikTok. Well, because it's a Chinese-owned company. Why didn't any Chinese company reincorporate here?
But he is obviously invested in being here and moving things here. Why can't he just...
The ByteDance CEO?
Yeah, why can't he just dissolve...
He's a Chinese national. He's a Chinese person.
But they allowed Murdoch to get his citizenship in 6 minutes.
I don't think this guy wants his citizenship. The same thing with Jack Ma, and which was really interesting is Jack Ma, an amazing entrepreneur in China, they just disappeared him for a while.
Right.
They just can you imagine disappearing Jeff Bezos for a while? I mean, people are like, oh, that's normal. I'm like, no. What if we just put Jeff Bezos? Well, he likes to be on the Insta. He likes to be on the socials a lot these days, showing off his pecs. But whatever, good for him. I think I think you don't understand the level of control. Whether it's control, it's the ability to control. And this country is a surveillance economy. We are a surveillance economy in a different way. And certainly the government has been caught spying on citizens too. Whatever you think of Edward Snowden, that was pretty devastating what the government was doing. I always assume the government's spying on some level, but not in the conspiracy state, deep state cutaway. I think they have the information. It's too good not to go after, and it's convenient to do so. But I don't know. They're not going to make it a U.S. company. Why would Mark Cuban, as usual, said the smartest thing to me about this, which was, Kara, they're never going to. At the beginning of this, he said they're never going to give this up because once we get a hold of that algorithm, we can see what they've done. Right? It'll be clear if they were spying or not. So if they were, we'll know.
So what happens?
By doing it. So nothing's happened because what they want to do now is buy it without the algorithm, some of the deals. But then it's just a brand. It's not the same thing.
So what happens with TikTok? Do you think Kevin O'Leary buys it or something like that?
Come on, Kevin O'Leary. He's not serious.
He was getting a lot of run at the inauguration weekend in terms of that's what's going to happen.
I love that he talks about it, but there's no way. It's not happening. I mean, I think there'll be some I don't know. It just depends on the Chinese. I think there'll be some fake deal that Trump will wave his hands around, sort of hand out the bennies to his friends, like Oracle. He already did that in the first time. Oracle was handling the back end. Probably Musk will be involved in some fashion because it dovetails really nicely into his AI stuff. It would be very powerful for his AI stuff to get
But
his
can
hands
you
on that.
have him control 2 of the 3 biggest platforms?
If he's best friends with Trump and has a White House pass, sure, why not? I mean, this is transparent corruption that's happening. I mean, talk about the meme that's the coins. That's like transparent corruption. Is all it is that you don't have to buy a hotel room at Trump Tower anymore or go to his stupid golf courses. You just buy some of that coin and show him, who's your friend. And so, yeah, I think it could happen. I think it'll be hard for people like Mike Johnson or anybody else or he controls the SEC, controls the Justice Department. It'll be interesting. They have someone at the Justice Department, Gail Slater, who is great, is very well respected as an antitrust person. All they have to do is point to Facebook and say, we have competitors. Like, there's Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, which is also Facebook. But, I think they probably could make an argument that it's fine. I don't think the Chinese are going to, I don't know. They'll make some fake hand wavy deal, but it's not going to be Kevin O'Leary. It'll be more Elon Musk and possibly moving it into the Twitter AI universe.
So does that mean that TikTok stays?
Not as it is, because they're not going to let the algorithm go with it. The Chinese will not let the algorithm. They'll have to recreate an algorithm in some way. So you'll get the Twitter algorithm, I guess, which is what I call a Nazi porn bar at this point. But, you'll get whatever algorithm they choose to put on it.
You do believe Twitter has changed, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay,
I never was called names on the.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
I got
all right, good. So what do you think? Not that you're being called names, that I don't like, unless it's me. But what do you think changed on Twitter? Do you think they lost a lot of people, replaced with other people?
The numbers are clear. The numbers are clear.
What do we know?
Who knows? Because it's a private company.
Right.
He could be making it up, and he's not the most genuine people around. I think obviously the numbers are down. People are moving to Blue Sky and Threads and I think social media is dissipating in a way that's really interesting. But I think he games the algorithm. It's been well reported to focus on him, to focus on the people he wants to boost, such as white supremacists and other cagey characters.
Do you think he can also make you get less reach if he can make you get more reach?
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
I could be totally paranoid, but I've never had accounts go down. Okay.
Right.
And now, and again, it doesn't matter to me if it's 1 million, 2 million, it doesn't really matter. Mm-hmm. Most of what I do isn't clickbait anyway.
I don't use it. It's not useful.
I'm okay with it, but
before.
I notice, like Piers Morgan, so I went back and I looked, and he gets good traffic, right? They like him right now. He's really ingratiated himself. He's very smart that way, Piers, and I don't even mean to ascribe any animus. I'm just saying he's savvy. So he puts out this thing saying that salute was nowhere near what people are saying it was. And that thing has gotten millions of views.
Of course, because everyone wants to hear what Piers Morgan thinks on that topic.
That's right.
No, it's ridiculous. I mean, he does whatever he wants. He gamed it for himself. I find, listen, Twitter was useless before as a marketing vehicle, and now it's completely useless. Like, I never thought it was very good. We used to have, our sites would always do better on LinkedIn or YouTube or Google search, but Twitter was never it was just more of a vanity thing. It was fun and interesting. And now I don't like being called names all day, and it's not useful to me. And it makes me feel bad. It doesn't help me. That would be the only reason to use it, right? Or help sell my podcast. And I do think it's gotten, it's just not a good product. And one of the things Elon said very early was, if you're on it for an hour and you feel bad, you shouldn't use it. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right. I just don't think it's a good product anymore. And everything comes down to product, Chris. Like, it has to be a product you like whether it's a cable show or whether it's a TV show or anything that you're making in media, it has to be something people like to consume or hate consume. But it's not even a good hate consumption device anymore, because there's all these randos that are just yelling at you. In my case, it's very unhappy men, but that's fine. Like, let them yell at someone else. They don't need to yell at me.
Support for the Chris Cuomo Project comes from Shopify. Shopify. If you want to learn how to sell, you got to be with people who know how to make the most of the digital marketplace, okay? Everybody wants to start a business. We're all in entrepreneurial mode now, right? This is a let's do this. Now is the time. That's the vibe, right? But here's the thing. How do you maximize? How do you make sure that what you have to sell is going to get to the right people the right way so that you secure transactions instead of, at best, just browsers? Shopify makes it simple to create your own brand, get you open for business, and get your first sale, and it can do it quickly and efficiently. Established in 2025 has a nice ring to it, don't it? Sign up for your $1 a month trial period at shopify.com/ChrisC. That's all lowercase. Shopify.com/ChrisC. All lowercase. And you can start selling with Shopify today. How do I get it? Shopify.com/ChrisC. Support for the Chris Cuomo Project comes from Oracle. Even if you think it's a bit overhyped, AI is coming. All right? I mean, look, everywhere you look, you're hearing about it or you're seeing it already. Self-driving cars, molecular medicine, business efficiency, everything we're seeing online, especially when you're looking at videos, you don't even know who's real anymore. If it's not in your industry yet, it's coming fast. But AI needs what? Speed, power when it comes to computing. So, how do you compete without costs going crazy? Time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud. Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, OCI. OCI is a blazing fast and secure platform, all right? It just totally upgrades and boosts your infrastructure, database, application development, plus all your AI and machine learning workloads. OCI costs 50% less for compute and 80% less for networking. So you're saving, not spending more. Thousands of businesses have already upgraded to OCI, including Vodafone, Thomson Reuters, and Suno AI. Right now, Oracle is offering to cut your current cloud bill in half if you move to OCI. So for new U.S. customers with minimum financial commitment, this is a great deal, but this offer is going to end March 31st. See if your company qualifies for this special offer at oracle.com/CCP. Oracle.com/CCP for the Chris Cuomo Project. So help me understand this. I get the competitive basis for saying legacy media or even creating that term.
Sure.
I really see everybody except the what you call randos in the pod space, people who have no portfolio. There's only one of them, and it's not because he's on the left. I don't really care where people are on the spectrum. It's about what kind of critical thinking goes on. But Brian Tyler Cohen is the only guy I know
he does well,
who has no business talking about politics in terms of pedigree, who does a good job talking politics.
He does. Well, he's sort of the Joe Rogan of the left. He's sort of the Joe Rogan.
Except that Joe Rogan is, wow, Carrie, I never thought of that. Wow, I think that I will try. I think the dye can cure cancer.
Yeah.
Sure,
whatever you say. That's what I told the Harris people. Go on there and have her touch his arm just once or twice.
Right.
And then he'll be like, "I love you," because you paid attention to me, and they didn't do it.
So other than him, and again, it's not right left. Other than those podcasts, I obviously I believe in podcasts. I'm hearing it's all my money, but these guys on the right, I believe, are going to be replaced by better talent. I think like that.
Yes.
And Adam Carolla will have a resurgence. You know, he's one of the oldest, but Bill Burr and these kinds of guys are going to come in.
What is Bill Burr? He's not anything. That's why he's
great. But I'm saying like that space of, hey, you want to be angry about something? You want to be pissed off about what's going on?
Yeah. He's great.
Let
he's
a pro take you through it. Instead of like, Tim Pool or, whoever he is.
Yeah.
But here's my question for you. So I get legacy media for him. For a guy with a ski cap on and a big microphone that's the size of his head, I get why he wants you to believe that the New York Times is meaningless. That's right, from the Russians.
Right.
The idea of what you just said, though, that social media is dissipating. I just heard that from one of the guys at the Wall Street Journal that, it's not us. We know who the Wall Street Journal is. I'm not going to split into three things. He's like, but all of social media is splintering and there's stratification on their end, not on what they're calling the legacy end. CNN is CNN. Maybe it gets sold. It's still CNN.
Right.
what does that mean? Like, what does that look like, what's happening on the social media side?
I kind of have a counter argument, and I kind of sort of in Barry Diller's camp on this. Like, you can't have a worldwide network of information and not figure out a way to sell it to people. Like, I think right now the costs are out of line. Say CNN, where you used to work, the costs are out of line with the revenue. That's all. It's like, so let's get them into line, and and then they're not making products that are differentiated enough, right? Like, they're all the same product, and I think people get bored. Now, it only works at Fox News because they have an audience, which is a diminishing audience, by the way, of old people. So they have a captive audience in that. And it's sort of like being, what would be an old person's? It's like the Depends. They have the Depends market all sewed up. Okay, great. That doesn't mean you're about the future. And so when I got into podcasting, I really think I do see a lot of things where I did my blogs before everybody did these. Everyone now has the blog and the podcast. We did that 10 years ago because I thought, how can you create businesses where costs are in line with revenues? And so my podcast has 3 producers. That's it. It doesn't cost that much. And if you look at, which was really interesting, Scott does this all the time. He sends me it every week. If you look at, say, news commentary lists, we're solid number 5 globally, and all around us are right-wing people. Like, we're always right. We're the little, I wouldn't say we're blue. I think we're bluish. Like, we're definitely, you never know where Scott's going to go. But if you make a great, I just stick with this. If you make a great product and people feel good about consuming it, and I don't mean feel good, I mean, they feel smarter, they feel they've gotten some insight, even if they don't agree with you. They're like, that was a fair, accurate assessment of what I know. And I didn't know that. And I'm learning something here. I think you do well, period. And I think you're right. There's all these sort of, randos that are doing stuff that are just noisy. And I just think their product is boring. And
so
I think
you're
eventually,
in the engagement business, which
that's
requires
correct.
an independent type critical thinker who's not looking
Right.
to be co-opted. They are
Right.
in the enragement business.
Which works.
Which does work, but it seems to me that it's more fleeting. And
Exactly.
so many of them are low-rank comedians. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
And
yeah.
some of them are good comedians. I love comedians. I think that they're some of the most articulate people in the society. But I don't think it's a coincidence that these guys are popping up on that side who are really just young men who are pissed off.
Yeah.
And I feel like they're the ones who are going to get splintered off, because that's such
Right.
an easy market to enter.
I would agree because they're copying each other. That's the other thing is everyone's rushing to the contrarian side. Let's be contrary. Let's and tell you what's wrong with everything. I'm like, well, what's right? Why don't you talk to us about how to fix it?
Yeah.
Why don't you talk to us? I think the best thing for the Democrats is to start talking about what's right and what we can fix and what do you need, like that kind of thing. And I think one of the issues is that Democrats are talking about doom and gloom. Let's start, since they're all rushing to tell the deep state doesn't work, your government doesn't work. Everybody knows this economy is one of the best economies in the entire friggin' world. Start talking about that. Start talking about hope. It works just the same.
You know who's going to start talking about it?
Who?
Trump.
Pete Buttigieg. Trump.
No,
Yeah,
Trump is going to say, look how good the economy is now.
Of course he is. Of course
and
he
he's
is.
going to own the trend. And I say shame on the Democrats for not making the case.
I would agree. But I think one of the things that's really important to make any product is you make a product that people value and want to pay for. It's just if you make shitty potato chips, everyone knows they're shitty and they want to eat them. I just don't know why it's so hard for media to get that and then put costs. Even at all the cable networks, as you all made a lot of money as anchors, right? So at one point I was talking to one of the anchors at one of them, it wasn't CNN, and I said, well, what are you doing to earn your $5 million? I don't see $5 million in revenue attached to you, and then it has to be 10 because of your staff and everything else, to market you. So definitely don't see, I see maybe $1 million here, but I don't even understand. Everything I do is linked to revenue. I know if I do this, this happens. And then you can make better products. It's I know I hate to talk about news like a product, and then it has to be trustworthy so people believe you, and you have to be right. When I was right about what happened with TikTok, everyone's like, she was right. And I'm like, yes, because I spent 30 years covering this. I know these people. I know the moves they're going to make. And I do reporting. And I think the same thing with columns in newspapers. I'm so sick of columnists that don't do reporting. Do some reporting and then come to a conclusion. I may not agree with your conclusion, but I know you went out and talked to people and tried very hard to get it right. And then you can have a really great discussion on the edges. last thing I say is I was on a Piers Morgan show with one of these comics, and he just didn't know what he was talking about. And he just was blah, 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 like just mad all the time, like that kind of. And I have 3 sons. I know about this. I know these people. And by the way, my sons wouldn't behave like this. Like, this is a grown man, like whining, just whining his ass off. And I started explaining to him, actually, I'm like, no, actually this, no, actually this. And I said, this is exhausting having to school you on information that you can look up on Google, like, or anywhere else. And I was talking, he goes, you're over talking. He goes, you're talking over me. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, honey. And I called him honey. I said, I'm so sorry, honey. Did I overtalk you? I'm sorry. You're not very smart is the thing, but you're getting by on looks. And he just thought, like, he's like, how dare you objectify me? I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't, because you're not that good looking. And I just kept going. And it was like, they can dish it out, but they cannot take it. And they don't expect it from someone who's more liberal, right?
Right.
Like, that they don't.
Well, they don't. The reason they can't take it matters, and I don't know what to do about this. You know, one of the things, and I agree with you, and it bothers me because I'm not good at it. I always say I ask questions for a living. I'm not in the solutions business. When people ask me, well, what should we do about it? I don't know. I mean, if I knew, that's what I would be talking about. I just know that it shouldn't be talked about the way you're talking about it. Otherwise, it'll never be solved. But I know why they feign outrage and offense, umbrage. Here's why. That is the currency in digital media for motivating revolt. They have to be victimized. Mm-hmm. You have done me dirty. You are part of the establishment, the elite, what we used to call in classical literature, the oppressor. Mm-hmm. You're the oppressor. You've oppressed me. Mm-hmm. And, you check several of those boxes for these guys. So they have to be.
I don't know when I oppressed them.
So no. I'm not saying that you oppress them. Yeah. I'm saying you check the boxes of who they want to say oppress them.
Yes, and that's correct.
Here's the paradox. I thought you were a tough guy.
Mm-hmm. That's
I
right.
thought you were saying that you're going to kick my ass. I mean, they say I get it all the time until I'm in person. And here's the difference between men and women. I say this to my daughters all the time.
That to you.
If a
you
woman,
look pretty fit.
If a woman is upset at me about something, they walk right up to my big nose and light me up.
They do.
There's never any question about my stature because they're figuring I'm a human being and a male. So it's not like I'm going to see them like another guy, who's walking. They'll walk up and be like, when you said this, I didn't like it and you should know. 100%. Men, I'm telling you, Carl, men, 90% of the time, they look at me and they say the same thing. You're bigger than I thought you were.
Oh.
As if they've somehow been deceived. Like, shit, I didn't know that this was what I was going to have to beat the shit out of. Because that's all they say to me is, fuck you, Fredo, I'll beat your ass. All the time, no matter what it is. But it's fundamental to them. If I say anything to them or anything, you're coming at us. This is what you do. Now we in the 10%, they call themselves. I don't know what 10% this is, but the 10%, we were always right and we're coming for you now. I don't know who the 10% is. But I identify the dynamic, and I see it even in Trump. Trump has to be, at once, indomitable and constantly dominated. Everybody's getting him all the time, and they even shot him. Like, this is how much they come after him. That is as important as anything about him. The question is what to do about it. What do we do about it?
Well, I think, I don't know, someone like that, he's old, like he's not changing, like something happened to him in the youth. And one time there was one tech executive who was that way, like kind of that way, and was always trying to dominate. And I went up to him and I said, you know what, I think your parents are dead. I think their parents were dead. And I said, your parents aren't living and they're not going to hug you anymore. And I know you didn't get enough, but you need to fucking step off of me. Like, I'm sorry you didn't get hugged enough, but time's passed, get some therapy, move along. And I think, I think at some point things do change where people cannot be in a constant state of agitation. And I think Trump would be very smart not to cause, as you know, from an Italian word, because my grandmother used it all the time, was agita. Agita. Like, stop causing agita. You're causing me. My grandfather used to always walk down the street. He was a tough guy. His name was Sharky. And he would go to people, he goes, "You're causing me agita. I don't like it." Like, and they'd stop because he was kind of a scary kind of looking guy. But I think there's enough agita, and I think at some point people are not going to take it well, especially women. By the way, I was in a weird incident today. The reason I was slightly late today was a UPS truck or a FedEx truck, I don't remember, stopped in the middle of the street, and a guy was delivering mail. He blocked everybody, just blocked everybody, and he just was like, and he was right near the edge, so he could have pulled back or pulled over, but he didn't. He blocked everybody, and so all these people are trying to get their kids near the school, and they were like, "What in the actual fuck?" And all these women, he was like, I'm not moving for you. I'm delivering my things. You could move backwards. And these women were like, you fucking move backwards or we're going to take you apart limb by fucking limb. Like, it was great. And I was right there. I was like, yes, what she said. And it was really interesting because I think this guy had sort of, and the one lady said, you know what? You're not Donald Trump. Back up. Like, it was like, you're not pushing me around. So I think there is a countervailing feeling. And it's not like pussy hats and we're going to get you. It's this sort of like, just as you have a countervailing feeling of violence towards you, you have a countervailing pushback. And I think that is probably where we're going to go. And the Democratic leader of the future has to fight a little bit and be a little tough, and at the same time give you a sense of hope, right? Which Obama did in many ways, right? But I do think there's several really good Democratic. I mean, everyone's like hopeless in the Democrats. I'm not. I've met all of them.
Who do you
There's
like?
some really. Oh, a lot of the governors, like, Jared Polis. I like Andy Bashir. I think I like elements of all of them. Gretchen Whitmer, I think is really interesting. I very much think Pete Buttigieg is onto something, like onto the way he talks to people, is really interesting. I'm not Fetterman. I go in and out on, but I see what he's up to. I see his, like, I'll talk to, like, I'm the regular guy.
What about Shapiro?
Love him. I did a great interview with him. I think he's really interesting. He's brainy. He's very, he gets things done. And if you can be like, if Democrats can show themselves doing well on governorships around, and including mayorships, Dana Lurie just got elected in San Francisco. I liked London Breed. I thought she was handed a bag of shit and then was told, "Oh, look, you improved the bag of shit, but you didn't get rid of it." I was like, She was handed a bag of shit.
That's how it is in politics, though. You own the status quo.
She just the pandemic. She did an excellent job and had the right instincts, I think, around crime and a lot of stuff.
My favorite in that field is a name we haven't mentioned yet: Maryland Governor Wes Moore.
Mm-hmm.
That guy checks every box.
He does. Well, Republicans are telling me that thing about the military is a weakness, that where he said he was something. I didn't follow it closely. There's some controversy around service.
I don't know. I mean,
anyway,
look, he definitely served. He was definitely in combat, and that's enough. What happened when he was there? He's going to have to be held to account for it. But they're lifting up Hegseth. Anybody who does 5 minutes of research on military. And I am not these guys have kept me alive in bad places more than once. But if you are in a command position and you are in theater, you're in a kinetic combat zone, you almost always get a Bronze Star for that service. And I'm not saying you don't deserve it.
Right.
The demarcation is whether it has a V chip. The V is for valor, meaning that you did something in the combat that warranted the distinction. And if he can be Secretary of Defense with what is a very basic pedigree for those kinds of guys, then Wes Moore is fine times
absolutely.
10.
There's a lot of, I think it's not true that Democrats may be in disarray. That's their favorite thing. But I do think there's a lot of really promising people. Maura Healey is so liked in Massachusetts, and it's not because she's super liberal at all. She just gets stuff done there. I don't know how she's doing right now in her term, but the mayor of Boston is a badass. Like, there's all these really interesting. She just had a baby, and they were talking about her. She's going back after maternity pretty quickly, and they were talking about it on a radio show. She calls in, she goes, "So great, you're talking about my fucking maternity leave. Let me tell you what I'm going to do." Like, she was just like, she owned it, and she wasn't being victimized. There's a lot of really interesting all across the country. all across the country. I do like how Gavin Newsom's punching back at them. I don't mind that at all. He's not putting up with any shit. And you could criticize him too.
Yeah,
There's
he got, look, he's a mixed bag,
Yeah.
and that's not unusual, and it's not a criticism. He's going to have to find his lane and circumstance, and the burden of the Democrat has always been to be better. I know the Republicans will yell at me and say, no, you guys are the most vicious, and I understand why they say that, but a lot of it is gamemanship that they're saying that, and Democrats have to be better, and outrage is exhausting. And people
Nobody
are going to
wants
want
to feel
something
that
because
all
it's
the
not going to
time.
move the line. And that's why I believe that it's really important for Democrats, if they want to be productive right now, is they got to work with the Republicans on immigration reform.
Right.
And I'm
right.
not saying that as a partisan, because I really hate the parties. If I could change anything, I would do what Washington said. Get rid of the political parties.
Right. Well, that's not happening, Chris.
Don't let them, well, they're not in the Constitution. They're not creatures of law. They're just
No,
tradition.
I'm just saying it's just got to change. I think, I love these the primaries, the ones where
Ranked choice.
Ranked choice. I know there's issues around it. I've read a lot about it. There's different problems, but I got to say, it always seems to happen upon a person everyone feels okay with.
That's right.
Like it sounds, and it would. I think it was Jeff Zucker who said this. Something I was at. He said the real problem, the things that have hurt our country, are Rupert Murdoch, gerrymandering, and social media all together. And I thought that was a really smart assessment, because the gerrymandering makes it so reasonable people can't be reasonable, and therefore all these Republicans had to pretzel themselves into ways, like someone like Ken Buck. He left Congress. Listen, this guy and I are so far apart on so many things. I enjoy talking to him. He's a sensible conservative, but has some crazy stuff too. Like, I'm like, are you around COVID, for example? But he was someone you could deal with. And he learned himself up on social media. He learned himself up on tech power. And he was like, what in the actual fuck, Carol, with these people? And I was like, thank you, Ken. Thank you. What in the actual? And we came at it different ways, but we ended up having a really great dialogue. And then he left, and he partnered with a guy, Dave Cicilline, gay guy from Rhode Island. Couldn't be more blue. The two of them put out a report that was fantastic together.
Yeah, I know him. I've interviewed him a bunch of times.
Literally the most unlikely pair. There's all kinds of people like that across the country, both Democrats and Republicans, that really have had to pretzel themselves in certain ways.
Yes.
I think the Republicans more than the Democrats. And the Democrats just scream all the time, at each other and this and that. But the Republicans have had to really mutate themselves in ways that kind of reminds me of just how you mutate your body or you mutate yourself. And I think that's the real danger. Trump has an opportunity to not do that. He won't take it because he's a really limited person. But there is a countervailing force, I think, coming. And the same thing with media. As everyone's moving, tacking right, let's tell you what's wrong. There is a huge wide open space for saying, let's tell you what's right, and let's talk about how to get there. And I think that in that way, center and center left media can really reassert itself in ways, as long as they're not scream fests. And that on cable, the yell fest. I wrote you when you did that great mayor thing, when I was watching. What did I do? I said, this was something I learned about mayor. You had a Republican mayor, you had a Democratic mayor. I learned so much in that thing. I loved it. And I wrote you. I was like, you're like, I can't believe someone's watching. I was like, no, this is the kind of stuff that was helpful to me, as a person and as a consumer of that stuff. And there has to be more of that. And I'm sure people love it. I know they do.
Yeah, we've been doing that stuff. We've been doing, I hate that we call them town halls because everybody uses that term for everything now, but they're just penetrative, single issue dives on things.
Solutions-based,
Yeah,
right?
that are based on
Solutions-based.
people who are doing whatever that is that we're talking about.
Right, exactly.
So look, I appreciate and I like, and anything I can do for you at any time, I'm a call away.
Remember, the funny lesbian. That's what you want. Anytime you want a funny lesbian, you have it on, and then it upsets them because they're like, we don't know how to
You
interact with
are
her.
10 layers deep on everything you talk about, and that's the commodity.
Thank you. Anytime you have any tech questions or you need help fixing your phone, you call me.
I told you she knows. And what's really interesting is that the possibilities in front of us are so different than what we're led to believe. This media is dead. This media is everything. Neither is true. What is the future? The future is the same as the past, meaning what? Either people believe and want or they don't. Either people are inspired and motivated or they're not. It can be light, it can be dark, it can be good, it can be bad, but ultimately it's always about following the money, just like the sirens indicate. There's an emergency afoot. Follow the money, follow the power, and you'll find your way to what's actually happening. And Kara Swisher was very helpful. Thank you very much for subscribing and following, for checking me out on News Nation, 8 p.m. every weekday night, where we will be pushing for action that solves the problems that we all know exist. What do you say? Let's get after it. And as part of that, wear your independence. Get your free agent gear. And if you don't like the podcast ads, subscribe on Substack. It's only $50 a year, $5 a month, if you want to pay more than the per year price. And you'll get my whole fitness body reclamation project that's going on there, as well as dealing with my long COVID. Cheap, cheap, cheap. That's value.